want to tell you a story about a farmer in a field. And the story isn't about the seed, but it's about the soil. And in this field, there were three types of soils. One was hard. It became the path. It was the place where people walked, where the workers and farmers walked, and it became compact. There was another soil that was shallow. As you tried to plant in it, you realized that there was bedrock underneath, limestone. There's also another soil that was cluttered. It looked good, wheat was growing, but as you got closer, you realized it was a weed. You know, Jesus said every good and bad thing flows from one place. It's your heart. And these soils, this soil in this story is the heart. And I think for some of us, we fall into each of these categories. Some of us have a hard heart. We've just become hardened. And the seed that this story talks about is the words of God. It's the voice of Jesus. And some of us have this heart that has been trampled on, and it's hard. That's the soil we have is hard. And Jesus's voice and words can't get to us. But guess what? Jesus wants to soften your heart. And you know what's amazing about the field that is represented here is that the way they would sow in this time is seed would go over the whole field. All right. And what that represents is that Jesus wants to reincorporate the whole field back together again. Jesus wants to take even the hard areas and make it soft. Jesus wants to soften your heart. And for some of us, we have a shallow heart. The soil in our heart is shallow. And what Jesus wants to give us is depth. He wants to get our roots deeper, but the only way that we can go deeper is to go through things that are hard and painful and tough. We're in the middle of a crisis right now as we speak, and it's tough for all of us, but there's something that God's doing. He's growing a deeper well. Deep calls to deep. The deep voice of God is calling to the depth of us. God wants to give us spiritual depth. And there's some of us that also have a cluttered heart. The soil in our heart is cluttered. And God wants to open that up. He wants to declutter. He wants to create space in our life. We're addicted to busy. We're addicted to doing. We're addicted to going and doing more and trying harder. Don't mistake fullness for fruitfulness. There's a difference. And God wants to open up our life. And at the end of this, Jesus talks about good soil. And good soil reaps a harvest 30, 60, 100-fold. That's the words that Jesus uses. And in this time, a yield of 15 would have been great. A 5 would have been normal. But Jesus says 30, 60, 100. It's unbelievable yields. And what Jesus is saying is that if our hearts become good soil, we're going to see things we could only imagine. But good soil is exactly what we just talked about. Good soil means that our heart is going from hard to soft, from shallow to deep, from cluttered to spacious. God wants to give us a heart that is soft and deep and spacious. And in this time, in this season, guys, commonplace, that's what's going on is God wants to work on our heart. It's not a time for us to do more. It's not a time for us to try harder and go after our goals and our vision and the things that we desire. It's a time for God to work on our soil, to work on our hearts. And if we can get to a place where our hearts are softened, where our hearts are deep, we have spiritual depth, and we have space in our life, then I think we're going to see things we can only imagine.